My name's Paul Hamilton. This is my first year out of the classroom. So I've been a primary classroom teacher for about 22 years. Probably the last 5 or 6 years, I've been a head of learning technologies at a school in Queensland. I have a real passion for the early years. I love Seesaw. I can see the real benefit of using Seesaw, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of the aspects of Seesaw with you guys today. So once again, you know the drill. We don't really need to mute your mics because I think that's automatic, which is great, but please introduce yourself. I always find the chats down the side one of the real benefits of webinars because we're actually learning from each other, which is great. That's just really quickly plug for UTB. That's where you'll find us on our socials. If you just do a search on Using Technology Better or UTB, you'll find us in those spots, which is basically everywhere, which is great. So I put a little spiel up there. I know that's a lot of text for a PowerPoint or a slide, but I just wanted to highlight a few little things if I could. I think sometimes we look at great tools like Seesaw, but we don't really look at the pedagogies or put ourselves in the perspective from the student's point of view. So I'm going to look at that a little bit today and how we can create engaging activities for our students, but also keep looking at it from our students' point of view, especially if you've got young students. That should be at the forefront of your mind going forward. And I'm also going to give you some little tips about how we can collaborate a little bit. People often think Seesaw is not really collaborative because it's not kind of live streaming and we don't go backwards and forwards in real time. But in fact, there's some great opportunities that we can actually bring to our students to collaborate with Seesaw. So I'll go through a few of those things. And right at the end there, relationships. We're talking about how can we keep those relationships with our students going even when we are teaching remotely. And I think that's really, really important going forward. So this is what we're going to do today. And before you guys that have said that you've got experience with Seesaw, before you switch off, I am going to go through just accounts and classes really quickly because there's a couple of things that I'm going to turn off and on with those that will allow that collaboration to actually happen. So please bear with me at the start because I often show teachers this and they've been using Seesaw for a while, and there's a couple of little settings there that can actually enhance the experience we have with our kids. We're going to go through creating engaging content. We're going to look at how we can provide some effective feedback, how we can kind of design some collaborative tasks with Seesaw, and how to build those relationships online, which I think is going to be super important. Now, I'm going to post in the chat the shortcuts for Seesaw. So a lot of people ask, Paul, how do you get those little symbols up when we're actually creating tasks for our students? They are right there, and I'm going to give you a little link where you can get those, print them off so that you can use them in your designing of your lessons, which are really important. We know that our younger students need those visuals, so that's going to be super important for us to use today. And today is not about me going through slides. Today is about me going through demonstrations. So I want to do this live, and I find that's the best way for me to make mistakes and kind of crumble under pressure. But it also means that I am human and that I often make mistakes when I'm doing live broadcasts, but we're going to go through. I always find it's the best way to actually do it. Please jump in the chat. Mike's going to stop me when we have any really key questions that we need to stop as a collective group, which will be great. So let's get started. So I'm just going to do a search on Seesaw here, and we know that it's going to be the first one that comes up. So if you're brand new to Seesaw, this is a web-based application, so we're going to need to sign in. Okay, which is really, really important to log in. I would imagine that you're using your school accounts to sign in. And this bit is really, really important. Clearly, we need to know if you're a teacher, student, or a family member. Everything that I do today is going to be directed at the free Seesaw account, even though Seesaw has made some of the tools and functionality free during these challenging times, but I'm going to do everything in the free account because I don't want to show you tools that you might not have access to later. So I'm going to click on I'm a teacher, and I'm going to sign in with my Google account because I do have a Google account already lined up, which is fantastic. And you can see here, before I go through all this, I'm going to set up a new class. So this is one of the ones that I set up for a previous webinar. I'm going to go right up to the top left-hand corner here, and I'm going to click on the little cog, and I'm going to go to my account settings. I wanted to show you this because this is your teacher settings, and this is how you can do things like change your icon. Something simple like having a picture of yourself or a little Bitmoji or a little illustration of yourself is all about making that connection with your students. And so I wanted to show you that because although you've probably already done this, if you go once again up to your accounts and settings, there are some things we can do from an administration point of view that will help build those relationships. And I can upload an image, just take a quick selfie of myself and upload it. I find that's one of the things that starts to build those relationships from the very beginning. And it's got some other emails and notification things down the bottom. I don't want to receive an email for everything that happens. So I normally turn all these off. Right down the bottom is if you archive a class, that means when at the end of the school year, if you say I don't want that anymore, you can archive your classes and you can get them back up again at any stage. So that's just the account settings for the teacher. And I'd really encourage you with your students to kind of upload one of these icons that makes it fun, engaging for your students going forward. So that's the account settings really quickly in about 30 seconds. But we are also going to create a class. So we're going to create a new class from scratch. And we do that by going up to our teacher account. You can see I've already got 2B. So I'm going to create a class with you guys. And I'm going to name this South Australia. And I'll put year 2. Let's go with the year 2. This choose your grade level is not that important, but mainly based about the US, but I normally just put one in it anyway. And I hit the ticky box. Now, if you're completely new to Seesaw, I keep saying to my students, ticky box to confirm. That's what we're looking for when we want to submit something or save something. Okay. So here it's got a little demo. I've got no sample students here. I've got an ad up here. What I need to do is actually create my class. So you can see here's my class on the right-hand side here. I've got journal, activities, inbox, skills, which is normally the paid account, but I think they've made that free at the moment as well. But at the top, we've got our little spanner, and we're going to get into our class settings. Now, I know, once again, if you've already seen this, you probably know this, but I just want to highlight a couple of things if I can. That's my name. This is how we add students. This is how we manage teachers. So we might actually have a teacher aide or someone else that we would like in there and actually participating with our students. This is our class theme, where we can put a little color on our class theme. This is our class icon. And once again, you can upload your image. This is another way of building relationships and kind of customizing your area. I might go with a robot. That looks good. This is where we talk about student sign-in. So here, is it a shared device? Is it a one-to-one device? Are they logging in through their email, Google accounts? And this is really important when we look at from a student's perspective, and we'll jump into that today and see how that actually looks. I'm going to go to one-to-one because I'm actually assuming that my students are at home and they're going to log on, say, with their iPads or with a computer that's kind of no one else is logging into Seesaw. If you've got say twins or triplets or brothers and sisters that are in your class and you know they're going to share, we might go to the shared device. That might be an option. And down the bottom here, we can manage our students. So we've got a sample student. They're always good to keep in there. And I'm just going to add a few students if I can. You can cut and paste. And I might put Barry. Very Australian names. Barry the koala, that makes sense. That's good. Okay, that's looking really good. And once again, you can cut and paste your class list in there, and then it's as simple of getting out of that, and down the side, you'll see those come up. So we can manage students at any stage by clicking up the manage students, and we can add students as we go. This is really important, students' likes and comments. I know a lot of schools that have these turned off. I'm going to put student likes because I think there's actually a way of looking at likes in a little bit of a different way. I'll talk that through later on. And I'm actually going to enable student comments, and I'm going to actually switch off this one because I don't want to actually approve every comment that comes in. If you do want to approve everything that comes in, you can more than welcome to put that in. I'm not, because I'm going to use Seesaw for this class, not so much as a showcase of student work, but more for learning, more for kind of portfolios of formative tasks as well as summative. And I'm not actually going to show my parents. The parents are not, I'm not kind of communicating to my parents too much. So I'm going to turn that off, and I'm just going to let the work come straight in without me having to approve everything going forward. Here, I'm actually going to leave this on because I'm going to do some collaborative stuff where I actually want students to see each other's work. I'm going to turn off new items require approval, which is similar to the last approval. I'm going to allow my students to edit their work, especially after I give them some feedback. And I'm going to enable that sample student that I've got at the top there. I could turn that off as well if I wanted to. I'm not going to enable family access. That's probably something that you need to speak with your admins at your school about, what the actual purpose of Seesaw is. Is it for communication or is it not? And I'm going to leave off the class blog at this stage because that's actually a paid feature, but I think they've actually added it for free at this stage. I am going to create some folders. So I'm actually going to add some folders here. I'm going to create a little art folder. I'm going to create a literacy folder as well. Let's call it actually writing, because I'm going to do a, I'm going to do a writing, and I'm also going to do a reading one as well. And at any stage, if you're not happy with how it looks, you can do icons and things. So art and that will do a different color there, and we'll go back, and that's looking pretty good. So that's my managed folders. I've got a couple of folders set up, which is cool. I'm not going to worry about skills and camera roll activities. I'm just going to leave that for now. And I'm going to get out of my classroom settings and have a look and see how this all looks. Oh, this is looking good. So I've got my journal, got my sample student, Barry, Kate, and Ralph. I can add students at any stage. I can go to my cog and change any of those settings at any stage. So the two kind of edit icons we're looking for is the spanner for our actual class, and probably the cog when we're actually doing our teacher settings. So they're basically the two settings that we can have. And we can create multiple classes, by the way. If you're a specialist teacher and you want to have a music one as well as an art one as well, you can actually create multiples, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to get out of that, come over here, and let's get started. So the first thing, the very basic thing that we want to do is let's create, and don't forget, I'm a teacher here, so this is not what the students are seeing. I'm going to click my green add button and create a very simple task for my students, and I'll give you a few tips and tricks along the way. Hopefully you learn something new. So what would I do very much at the start of, say, a remote lesson? Well, I'm going to assign an activity, and I just want to talk this through at the moment. We've got a couple of sections in activity. We're going to look at the community activity library that is full of awesome activities that teachers are making around the world. We're going to go through that in a minute, okay? There is some awesome stuff there. My library allows me to copy some of them into my library, but it also allows me to create my own activity. You can see here, this little plus here. And I really want, I think it's one of the basic things we need to do is before we start grabbing content from the community library, that we need to know the fundamental skills and the tools from a teacher's perspective at the start. So let's create our little activity here, guys. So we need to name the activity. Okay, so we'll say that this is create a profile. So we want our students creating a little bit of a profile, and we would like them to actually use the shapes. So we're going to say we want them actually learning a little bit about shapes. So we might put numbers in, and these are the student instructions. So we might say, what do we want our students to do? We might say, use the shapes tool to create a shape profile of yourself. That's quite wordy. And to be honest, you're probably teaching some students that couldn't actually read that or make sense of that or comprehend what that's actually doing. So there's a couple of things that we can actually do. We can actually go through a lot of these and actually create little icons. I'll go through that later, but we can also add some voice instructions. So I'm going to actually read that as a voice instruction as well. And I'm going to click my record button. Hey everyone, I want you to go into Seesaw and create your own picture of yourself, but only using shapes. And then we press stop. So you can see here we've got an audio recording down the bottom as well as our text at the top. So this becomes really, really important in regard to reaching all of our students, accessibility, and we could even add a picture of ourselves or a movie of ourselves introducing the topic. Now, although this might seem like a really simple thing, these are opportunities for you to connect with your students while they're learning remotely. So although you might think, I'll just type it in and see how that goes, think about what your students would love. And they would love a teacher that actually videos themselves introducing each task. I actually think less is more and actually do each activity really, really well. So that's basically how you create an activity. I'm going to go through those little symbols and what we can actually do in a minute. But I just wanted to show you that basic of the first one. Now, down the bottom here is a really important aspect of Seesaw that is often overlooked. And that is you can provide a template for the student response. Now, if you don't do this, when they press respond to the task, it just comes up as a blank template. So I'm going to show you how to use this student response template as a way of kind of structuring or scaffolding or supporting your students for the very first time. So I'm going to click add, and I'm just going to select a drawing. Now, this is what our students will actually see. So I'm actually going to do a couple of things. I'm going to put a heading for them. And by the way, you'll get used to these. They're very easy to use. The great thing about Seesaw is it's beautifully made as a user interface for the tools. All the symbols, icons are made really big, aimed at younger students. Profile pic. And then I'm just going to go down here. This is where the shapes are. And I'm going to do a little kind of border. And I'm just going to do a little bit of text. Might actually go a little bit of an arrow. And by the way, when you click on the arrow, you get 3 little dots underneath, and you can do lots of things like colors and so forth. And I'm going to do an arrow, and I'm just going to do a little bit more. Oh, actually, I won't do text. I'll do a audio recording again. And I'll say, hello, everyone. I want you to put your shape picture inside this blue picture frame. And I'll press done at the top. And you can see there that I've got a little audio recording instructions on the template. And you might be saying, Paul, you've kind of done that twice. You've done that in the student instructions, and then you've done it underneath as well. I think it's really important when we initially get started in Seesaw is to create those response templates to give them an idea of where to put things just to support their learning a little bit. And then they can start to kind of ease off a little bit as they become more confident. So I guess I'm aiming this at students starting off with Seesaw. And then obviously, if you've used this a lot and your kids are absolutely whizzes at using the tools, you don't need to scaffold and structure that as much. So I'm just going to press save there. And you can see here that it's all ready to go in my library. I've got some instructions, I've got an audio instruction, and I've got a student template. And I'm actually going to assign that. Now it'll say, Paul, where do you want to assign it to? Well, this was my other class that I did with another webinar. This is us. And I can actually select students as well. So I could be differentiating, or I could have a small literacy reading group that I could actually assign that activity just to specific students if I wanted to. But I'm going to send it to all of them. There's only 3 students in the class. I could also schedule down the bottom as well. So you might get this ready on the weekend and have it assigned or delivered to your students later on, and it's assigned to class. That's all good. And I'm going to go back to class and just see how that looks from a teacher's point of view. So you can see here, I've assigned one to the class. nothing scheduled, nothing archived yet. I can see that this is waiting here. I can certainly hit my 3 dots if I wanted to edit that activity. But what I probably need to do is just get that sent off so that you guys can start to see what's going on. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to quickly go to my classroom settings. And if I go to manage students, and if I go to add a student, I can add students as I actually go along there. You can kind of see that. If I go back here and I go to this one again, and I go to students at the top, I can skip that. You can see here that this is where I can get my code, my QR code. So if our students are actually logging in from home and they've got a device, a tablet, like an iPad or something like that, they just hold it up to that QR code, which you could email to parents or have it on the fridge at home, and they can just get in straight away. The other thing to realize is if they don't need to keep logging out, they only need to log in once. I'm going to grab this code because I just want to quickly jump in and see what it is like from a student's point of view. I'll go through that again. Can I go through that again? It's up the top, class settings. I normally go through students. I just skip that and I look for my log on page. By the way, this is a great little page to actually print off as a PDF, but I just wanted to show you where to actually get that. So what I'm going to do now is just log out. And once again, if I'm going really quickly today, you will get a recording of this so that you can kind of play it at your own speed. I'm going to sign out. And this time I'm going to say, I am a student. And I'm going to put that text code in. But if you did scan code, all you would have to do is hold that up without the cat on top of your head, obviously. And you can actually turn the camera around as well and do some other things. So I'm going to press go on that and see what this looks like. Because I selected that my students were one-to-one, they had a device each, it's going to ask them their name first. So let's pretend that we're Barry. I'm going to log in as Barry. And you can see over here, up the top left-hand corner, like my teacher view, Barry is sitting up here. So that's kind of the student account up there that you can see that it's Barry. And do you know what? Barry might not log out, like I mentioned before. He could purely just stay logged in if he doesn't have to keep getting out of the application. So what can Barry see? Well, if he clicks on the activity, he can see all the other students haven't submitted. And that's actually, if you remember back at the start, I actually allowed students to see each other's work and actually comment. You can turn that off at any stage. We can play the instructions, or we can add a response. Now, when I click on add a response from Barry's perspective, you can see I've got my audio there. Hello, everyone. I want you to put your shape picture inside this blue picture frame. And so you can see there that we've got the actual audio recording as well, and we can actually respond from it. So if I get out of that, I'm just going to delete and just add that response down there. So you can actually see that we can actually go through the different instructions there. And sometimes the audio instructions are not the best way to kind of jump in and out of those different things as well. You can sometimes when we have those audio instructions, it actually goes in. And so we've got different tools that we can actually use, and we'll go through those. And I'm going to go through those later. I think one of the things that actually does that, we can go full screen if we want to, but we probably need to get to the stage where we're actually doing some actual activities as a response going forward. That audio recording is probably not a great place to actually place that, but this is just showing you what it looks like from a student's point of view going forward. So if I log out of that just really quickly, and I log out of Barry's activity here, and if I go to my, not my accounts, right down the bottom, I'm going to sign out and quickly sign in as a student, as a teacher, sorry. You can see how easy it is to kind of jump between your accounts when you're actually looking at different things going forward. So this time I want to actually create an activity that has a few more symbols and things and see how our students can actually respond to these. So let's assign an activity. Let's go with another basic activity. We won't grab an activity yet. Let's go with a take a photo. So let's just say we want our students to take a photo of some objects around the house and maybe get them to annotate over the top what are the sharp bits of the object. So we'll do this a little bit differently this time. We'll say, take a photo of an object in your house. Then I might say number 2, I might say, hey, add a drawing showing a sharp, spelling well, or smooth cuts. Now, you can see here that I've done some symbols as well. We'll talk about how that looks and why I've done that. I referred to a picture earlier on with the text shortcuts. We'll go through that in a minute and how important that is to actually use it. I am going to add some voice instructions as we go through as well. I won't do it for this one because we did it for the last one. And I'm just going to do a very basic without that audio at the top now. I'm just going to put place your object below. And I won't put a audio recording because that actually mucked up my last one, but that's fine. So that's looking good. And if I press save, in the preview window, you'll see here, before I assign it to my kids, you'll see this bit here. Can you see it says there, take a photo, and it's got the photo there, the camera, and it's got add a drawing to show the sharp or smooth parts. These little visuals are in a text shortcut document that I will place in the chat when I stop in a minute and answer any of your questions. So I'll put that in the chat. Seesaw have got some wonderful support materials that we can actually use. I've also added a template for a response. So I'm going to assign that. I'll send it to all my kids. And I'm going to jump in and view it in the actual activity in here. So you can actually see here that I've got 2 activities actually done. And let's have a really quick look and see how that looks as a student, and let's actually have them responding this time. So I think I had the same code and I'm in. Let's say I'm Ralph this time. And let's respond to this activity. So it says add a response. So I click on add a response. You can see I've got all of my tools down the bottom. And I can also view my instructions at the top there. So that's really good. And don't forget, highly encourage you guys to put a audio recording or a movie recording showing your face or making that connection with your students and build that relationship aspect going forward. I think it's really, really important. So we'll look at that and we'll assume, take a photo here. I wonder if I've got a photo. I might just take a water bottle photo maybe. I wonder if I can take a photo in my camera. I've got my cat here, the old Snapchat filters, finding it hard to turn those off. So here we go. So we've got those here, and this might be a sharp aspect of it. So what are we going to do? Place your object, and we've got a highlight. So I'm going to hit my pencil tool, select, and I might put these bits here. And I might say that they're smooth parts. Now, I always like to think, what device has the student got? If you know that they're using iPads and that, you can actually encourage them to do a little bit more annotating than kind of using keyboards or mouse or that sort of thing is here. We might select a different color and say that that was a sharp bit at the top and so on. And we've got lots of different tools that we can actually use going forward. So down the bottom here, this is kind of our move tool. Down here, we've got a pencil, we've got a different pen, we've got a highlighter that we might actually use later on in regard to specific bits that we could actually use. We've got kind of your magic wandy type pen that all kids love, and some of us not so much as teachers, and we've got an eraser tool as well. So there's lots of different tools. Down the side here, we've obviously got our shapes that we can actually create with shapes, make bigger, can actually do a range of different things in regard to responding. We can actually change the style of those, order them, lock them, duplicate, delete, and so forth. All of the time, I used to encourage my students to do an audio recording of explaining what they actually did. So I always used to love to encourage that talking and speaking and kind of explaining and making that thinking a little bit more visible as we go forward. And obviously we've got the text as well. So we've got the text box here, and even young students, I know some are really quite capable of typing and really developing their language skills with written text. So, you know, think about the kids that you've got and what you're actually asking them to do. You might actually say that you want them to actually type a response, or you might say, no, I'd actually like an audio recording for this one, and you can actually dictate what you would actually like. And I think that's really important going forward, that we can do those things. When the student's finished, we just hit that check button, or that ticky box as I call it, and you can actually see that there, that it's been delivered. Okay, and that's really, really important. If I log out of Ralph's account really quickly and I log into another student's account, I wanted to show you how that might look from another student's point of view. So this time it might be Kate. And you can see here that Kate's got an activity waiting for a response. So I might add a response for Kate, place your object here. I might just actually create a little, I wonder if I should just upload a picture. No, I'll do a little shape. This is obviously not an object below, but it might have some sharp points that we can actually talk about. That looks good. Click here. And this time we might actually use that tool to actually signify the sharp parts. So once again, this is where you can kind of look at some different things and say, these are the tools that we're encouraging to use as well. And so that was Kate, I think. I think we'll do the ticky box and just see how that looks. Now, if I click on those activities and we look at those activities here, and we look at the classroom activities, and if I click on the take a photo, you can see here that Kate, because I'm logged in as Kate, can also see Ralph's work as well. So do you remember when we set up our account settings at the start, we allowed our students to comment on each other's work? Well, this is where, as part of the task, we could ask our students to make some sort of, or give some feedback to other students. Now, I'm not sure kind of the systems and the different structures that you guys have got in place, but we used to have three stars and a wish. So I might encourage my students to give some feedback here and say, great photo, very clear. Are there any other smooth parts? So just getting our students to really kind of reflect. And don't forget, if it's not text-based, if you don't want to do text, there's actually an audio recording you can do if that wasn't there. So if that wasn't there, you could actually do an audio recording going forward, which is really, really important. So I'll just paste that back in and I'll post it. Now, the like is an interesting one. I used to use with my students, like as not a way of saying, I like your work, but actually I've seen your work. So it was almost like a little checklist to say, I've actually seen that. And so I always used to like the like to say that my students actually saw that work, not necessarily I actually like it, but depending on the age of your students, that will be interesting. So you can see here that people have got 3 responses. One's waiting for approval. I've got drafts. Got 1 that's not responded, 2 have responded, and Barry I'm still kind of waiting for. And this is just a great way of seeing each other's work. If you feel that it's the kind of task where the students are just basically doing the same thing and you're getting that repetition and you're getting that kind of recipe, you could really quickly turn off the ability to look at each other's work and comment on that as well. And I might go through that at the end if we've got time again. So that's from a student's point of view, and you can see that the work's starting to come in and actually going down here, which is fantastic. So what I'll do is I'll sign out one more time and I'll sign in as a teacher. And I'm going to go back to some questions before I get on to some extension-y type activities going forward. So I'm just going to sign out of that, sign back into my teacher account. And I feel like I'm just talking to myself here. So I need some sort of connection with the audience because I'm struggling a little bit. So let me go back to my webinar, and I'm going to turn my screen, stop sharing, and I'm going to turn on my face and just have a look. I'm not sure if Mike's still there or not. If you've got any questions.
Yeah, you got a few rolling through, but you were starting to answer them as you kept showing more and more. So I was thinking I'd just let you keep rolling for a bit, and then
no, that's okay.
With Steve pulling it out. So we had some questions about, can you turn off the setting for students seeing each other's work? So you addressed that. Someone said, how can we see our folder? And then you addressed that. Leonie's got a question about Teams, and I answered that one for there was a question here about printing from Seesaw. Can you do that?
Yeah, so I'll go through that maybe in the next section, Mike. So the two things I'll probably go through is just the folders. I probably didn't handle how to place them into folders a little bit. I'll do that first off. I'll make a note of that. And the other one, Mike, was the printing. Okay, printing off. Yeah.
Yeah, and then similar to folders, I guess, Daniel was asking, can you have more than one class, like art and language? But maybe you want to just talk through the difference between class versus folder on.
Yep.
And in terms of input, like there's a couple of good questions around, is there length on video or audio that you're allowed to put in there?
I think there is, Mike. I'd have to double check that, but I've never been pulled up in regard to the length of it. So I would imagine it's fairly decent. But I also think small and sharp are probably better than too long-winded. I don't think it's the kind of platform where you're going to do a 45-minute lesson and then post that. I think you probably want to keep it short and sharp. Yeah,
I'm talking about limits. Is there a limit to how many multimedia attachments students can upload per activity?
No, not that I'm aware of, but we can actually test that out a little bit. They can do multiple, but once again, I always probably thinking at home, Wi-Fi, surrounding environment. Remember, you're sending this to the cloud and back. Just be aware of the iPad takes a high resolution video. So you're talking about big file types. So once again, maybe keeping it a little bit shorter.
Yeah, good choice. So another one around more than one multimedia. So for example, upload a PDF as well as a video link. So you've covered that. Can you tell us a bit more about the blogs and how that function works? Is that coming up in your next session?
It's not, because it's a paid feature. But if we get to that, we'll have a look at that if we've got time going forward. At this time, I think Seesaw has made that and the skills actually free, but I would imagine that will switch off at some stage. So we really just wanted to show you the free at this stage and then look at the extensions later.
Yeah, great.
All right.
A couple more questions just before you bounce out. Can you turn on the comment function for individual activities instead of having it turned on as a general setting? That's a good question.
That's a very good question. I think it's a blanket decision on comments, yes or no.
Okay.
If you feel like you've got some subgroups that are not anticipating it, you could theoretically just have some different groups associated and actually have it turned off for one class and another class, but it's kind of doubling up. I'm unaware of it, but I could certainly have a quick search and see if that's a possibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you come across this? Monique was saying of having issues uploading YouTube video links of more than one in my activity. I ended up having to create 3 separate activities so the links would work.
Yeah.
Is there a way to make this work without doing it?
So links are problematic because it only has the one area for it to actually click on. It's a little bit different than the Canvas where you can put multiple photos on a screen and a PDF. When you're attaching something like a link or a PDF, it has restrictions on the number of those, obviously, because it doesn't know how to present that to the young kids. You know, it's basically just one attachment going forward. So, yeah, I understand. It's probably better to break them into smaller little activities going forward, I think, more than having on one. I'll also show you an announcement, how you can make some announcements to all of your staff, so all of your children, so it's not so much an activity, but an announcement as well. That might be where you can put some multimedia in there as well.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Kerry's got a question about scheduling. Can you schedule it to go? I assume this is what the question means. I'll read the question and you see if you interpret it the same as me. Can I schedule an activity for a specific day or is it recommended to assign it the same day you would like it to be completed?
That's a really good question. I think because we're dealing with younger children often with Seesaw, not all the time, sometimes it's upper primary as well, I think your ability to schedule it is perfectly fine. I think we need to give our young children a time to complete tasks when they're ready and their family and their environment's ready, less than let's all get on at this specific time. I think you've got to give them a little bit of leeway. But also be aware that we don't want to be scheduling for, say, Sunday night or night times in case they are on their iPads and they're looking for activities to do. So I'd be scheduling me personally, 8:40, 9 o'clock in the morning, just like a normal school day. We come in, oh, there's an activity assigned for me. Let's get started, go from there.
Yeah. Another good question. This may be coming up later about parent access. So can parents access activities and respond through their account, particularly for young students?
Yeah, so that's something that you need to set up basically from a school point of view. So we've had multiple discussions at my old school and we didn't go down that path. For the simple fact is we needed to get a really grip on why we would be sharing with our parents. That doesn't stop them being next to them and doing the activity together and seeing what's happening and actually joining in on the activity itself. But in regard to sharing specific activity and announcements and class blogs and things like that, you've got to set that up as a separate entity. And I would encourage you to talk to your admin about that. I think that's something that you probably need to do first before you jump into that and say, I'm sending it to parents, because that's when you get issues from a collective.
Yeah, that's good. Kate just said in chat that you can record up to 5 minutes by the looks of things.
Yep.
Someone was just having an issue uploading a PowerPoint. Somebody else suggested maybe you just put that as a PDF. Or the other option you could be have it as a PowerPoint live and then just drop the link to that PowerPoint and they'd go and watch it. Would you recommend that over the other poll? Yeah,
or even just screenshotting your slides or export as a series of pictures and break it down into sections a little bit. I will show you how to add a page to your assignments, so you can actually go page to page to page down and actually give it a little bit of structure going down that way.
Excellent. Maybe just one or two more questions and I'll let you launch back into round two. Jade's asking, how can we make sure students don't log into another student's profile?
Yeah, really good question. One of the things that we did starting off was the one-to-one, if you remember, where the students had to select their name when they went into the class QR code. We used to have a setting where we had one of the other settings and the students did their work and then they had to pick their name at the end of it. And what that did is if they got that last step wrong, it's basically sending their work as someone else. And I guess that's just something that you've got to manage and talk to your kids about, looking at that little icon at the top left-hand corner and saying, am I Barry? I will show you how you can change the student little icons of the snake to actually pictures of themselves or little illustrations. That might help them recognize who they're actually in and what kind of profile they're actually in at the start.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Maybe the last one, and you might come to this a bit later, but can you show how to upload a video?
Yeah, I can do that. Absolutely. Okay, let's jump back in, Mike. I'm going to jump back in and see how we go here. I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to go back to Seesaw, hopefully back here. And I'm going to go to my group here. Hopefully you can see what we're doing here. So I'm hoping in this next session, I'll actually answer some of those questions, but we'll have a little bit of time at the end to go through anything that I've actually missed going forward. So let me just hide this. All right. So let's have a look at some of those things that we can actually do. Let's sign an activity here that involves some of your questions, and we'll have a go at this. So I'm going to create a new activity. Let's say this is descriptive writing. And I'm not going to put the icons in here because I want to talk more about the multimedia aspects of it here. So what I might say is look over the images and respond with some descriptive language phrases. Just bear with me here. It's more about not so much the content here, guys. So once again, audio restriction is good. For this one, I'm actually going to add a template with student responses with some multiple things there that we can actually put. Let's have a look at some of the multimedia that we can add. So if I upload here, oh, well, this is great. I can add up to 10 images or a PDF or one video. So when we're talking about file types, we are restricted, but we've kind of got the big three there. So whatever you want to get in, we need to make sure that it is one of these three formats, and you can see the formats that are there: JPEG, PNG, PDFs as well. So let me just see if I've got one of these. I've got a little movie file over here that I'm just going to drop over. It says uploading. I might have to go, depending on my browser, I might actually have to go back. But I'm going to attach that by hitting the green ticky box, and you can see here that it's got an example. Now you can see here it's a little bit restricted in regard to the amount of videos that I can actually put into my page. You can actually see that there. So I've got, this is more, these instructions, the voice recordings and the video are more about the instructions and the explanation of the task than the actual task itself. I normally do the template for the task. So if I go into, say, drawing, and if I upload some things in here, I've got a couple of little things here that I can actually look at. So I've got a little picture here that I'll open, and I'll put that there. Let's have a little bit of a look at what we can do here. I've got a little picture over, let me go to my desktop. Got some nice pictures here, stimulus kind of quick pictures here. And I'm going to do one more over here. This could be my, let's upload another photo from here. This is a great little stimulus picture. So you can kind of see here that I've got three kind of images that we can actually put in. And you can put a video in there as well, but you are restricted in how many you can actually put through. But down the right-hand side, see down the bottom right-hand here, if I just cut and paste that, I can actually add another page. Well, I can't. Ooh, that's interesting. So they haven't added that. They haven't added that yet to the free account, which I thought they had. That's fine. We learn something every day. That means that we're going to be restricted in regard to what we can actually see. Now, we can zoom in, by the way, so we've got some little features up here. So we've got some multiple images in here. Remember, this is the student template. So this is what the students will respond on. And we might put a little bit of text in there and say, right, descriptive words below. And once again, this is this kind of scaffolding or this structure that I think is good for students to actually have. So I'll move some of these pictures up. That one's not a great picture, so I'll make this one a little bit bigger. And we get our students just to reflect on here. And because we also want our students to do an audio recording, we might actually say add your recordings here, just to really encourage our students to kind of that saying each of the descriptive words out loud and so forth. So we've got some pictures there. We've got some different aspects there as well. If I hit my tick here, once again, it's kind of a little bit restrictive. We've got some more options down the bottom as in regard to teacher notes. Skills, we won't go into too much because that's more of the paid version going forward. But you can see how that's structured with a video, voice instructions. This is kind of the instructional teaching part of things. And then you've got this section here as well. If I got rid of that here, and I added a multimedia example, I just want to show you another way you might be able to do this as well. So you can obviously upload your links. Someone was talking about YouTube clips and some different things there. You can. This is a note that you can actually create. We've got our links. We can upload files and videos and different things as well. With your video, we've got our videos there. We'll get out of that. And we've got our pictures as well, which is important going forward. So we can record and use all of these tools to actually create something. So you might actually create a little shape investigation and just put a range of different shapes around and get them to actually identify those or label them or do some different things going forward as well. So that's just one way of kind of looking at using some of that multimedia and multiple photos going forward. That's not related to that at all. And we're just going to save that and we'll assign that to our students. The other thing, and I'm really conscious of time here, the other thing that I wanted to do, we asked about this, we can actually put that in a folder. So we might actually say, I'm going to still assign it to my students, but I'm actually going to put it in the writing folder and I'll hit my ticky box. And what that'll do is it'll send it to those students and I'll show you how that looks from a student's perspective and actually placing it in folders. So I'll assign that to my class, get out of that and go back to my class. Someone also asked about replies. So if I actually go back to one of my replies, who did we have responding? If I look at the take a photo one, and I can see that Kate and Ralph responded, I might actually want to put that in a folder. So what I can do is I can click on Kate's work, can write a comment, but I can also place that in one of the folders. That allows you to structure your, I guess, organization a little bit. You can obviously still see his work or her work, sorry, in the stream of work that's kind of coming in. But you can also start to organize that. So you might have a folder for literacy and maths and you can actually assign things within that. That's just a great way of keeping things nice and tight and actually putting them in, I guess, tasks or curriculum areas or that sort of thing. So if I just quickly go back, because I think I'm kind of reading your mind a little bit here. If I go back to my group over here, class icon, if I go down to manage student, if I click on Ralph, remember I told you that you can actually use a photo. So you can actually use a photo of Ralph to help him ensure that he's in the right group, or he could actually do some artwork and you can actually upload a profile pic, or he can choose one of these icons as well, or you can choose one of those icons. But that comes from you going in there as well. So if I just go back, and I don't go down to my folders, that was how we created folders. Remember, anything that we're editing within the class itself needs to be here. So that's really, really important going forward. And here is where we talked about seeing each other's work. You can turn that off if you would like. I'm going to cancel that. I want to leave that on. We can enable editing. And the commenting we can turn off if we don't think it's there, or we can say, hey, I'll put on the comments, but because I'm a little bit worried about some students possibly saying inappropriate things or there's some other issue, we could actually say, that requires approval from me, the teacher, before it goes live and public to everyone else. So that's a good way to look at maybe restricting comments, but also allowing that freedom and that trust element going forward as well. There is one more thing I really wanted to show you before we start to answer some further questions going on, and that is accessing some of these awesome activities that are in the community section. So if I go up to the top, press Add, Assign Activity, and if I go to the community, this is where you can find amazing activities that teachers have posted. So if I look at second grade, let me look at art. I've got some really great, there's a little Dr. Seuss activity here, which is fantastic. I've got a get to know you activity. I've got creativity and the dot, which is fantastic. Got a range of different things. If I click on the get to know you activity, you can see here that this teacher's written some teacher notes. So that was down the bottom, which is good. They've got very simple instructions with definitely an audio recording there, which is what we want to see. And if I press the little heart, what that actually does is it puts it in my library. So if I go to library now and I open that activity in my library, you can see that I can do some different things. So I'm not really that happy with the teacher using her voice, and maybe there's a picture of the other kids or something that's in there. So what I'm actually going to do is right down the bottom, I'm going to copy and edit the activity. And I'm going to say that this is actually activity 1, get to know you. I might leave these. These look good. I might get rid of the audio recording and add mine, because it's always good to use the teacher's. There's a sample attached. I might be able to create my own sample instead of using someone else's. And I might actually add a template for student responses. So in essence, what have I done here? I've copied someone's awesome activity and I've personalized it for my students by adding some instructions and maybe changing the steps as well. So if I add my voice, I can really customize it and personalize it for my students going forward. So if I press save there, I've now got, it's myself, it's kind of a little bit more like my activity. And what I've actually got here is I can assign that to my students going forward there with my recording and a little bit of personalization from my end going down. So that was something that allows you to get these awesome activities off the community page, but also just spending that, 2 minutes personalizing it and customizing it. And we know that flipped, for example, with flipped learning, there is data to suggest that when it's actually coming from the teacher's voice and it's actually personalized and it's not someone with a different accent that they don't know, the results actually improve and their quality of work is higher. So I'd encourage you to really customize those awesome activities that are currently sitting in the library section there as well. So if I go back to class, I've sent that, no one's responded yet. I can also do something else which is called an announcement. Now, announcements are really great for a variety of different reasons. I'm going to send this to all students, which is just 4 of them. And here we can make an announcement to my whole class. So when would I use this? This could be an announcement in the morning where you say, welcome everybody, I'm really looking forward today. Stay tuned, keep watching Seesaw. I'm going to place 2 activities today. I'd like to have them submitted by nighttime or something like that, which is great. We can add an attachment. So all of those features we can have there. So we might add a video of ourselves giving that announcement. But we could also use announcements as a way of, when you're in class and you've got a whole lot of hands up, you've got the whole class with their hands up, or you're receiving work that is totally not what you expected, and you actually have to stop the class, bring them back together, give them a little bit more, or explain it in a different way, and then send them away again to do their work. This is the way I used to like that, is when it was coming in remotely and I could see a pattern developing or a misconception or something that I haven't done well as a teacher and instructor, I would send an announcement out, because that is really obvious for the students and they can say, oh, I need to go back and look at my work. So we might say something like, hey everyone, noticed that the descriptive writing task wasn't followed. Go back. Notice that the descriptive writing task didn't have enough detail. We might say an announcement like that. We might go to send now and actually send that out. So if I look at it from a student's point of view, you can actually see that announcement and how, I'll sign out there. If I log in as a student, sign out. If I log in as a student, I'm not sure if I've still got that code. No, I did the cut and paste. That's not good. I'm out. You'll have to bear with me. I forgot that code. I'll log in back as a teacher, and I think I can see it as a teacher's point of view anyway. Let's log back in. Okay, so this is good. This is kind of showing you once again how to get that code. So if you go up to class settings and you get that code and you copy that. Once again, QR code works really, really beautifully going forward. Let's just have another try at that and sign out. I'm a student, text code, go. And that's the wrong account, so that's really good. I think it's going to be one of those days. It's been a big morning, everyone. So I'm going to go back into teacher account. I think I grabbed the other student code. So I was in the 2B one. I needed to be in the South Australian one. So I'm just going to grab that really quickly. I apologize. Students, skip. Let's grab that one. And we'll see how that looks from a student's perspective. Okay, I'm a student. Let's get in there and we'll go. So if I'm Kate and I have a look at my dashboard, I've got my activities. If I look at my journal, these are kind of all of the activities that I've already done and I've kind of contributed to already, and I can see each other's work as well. I can see Ralph's work there. That's in my journal section. If I go into the activities, I can still see the ones that I still have to do. And in my inbox, you can see that I've got my class announcement. Which I think I've just deleted, but that's okay. Let me just go back, class activities. And inbox. My internet's struggling a little bit at the moment, but that's okay. So this is basically just seeing how everything looks. That's my announcement. I've got my class announcement there. It kind of sits in the messages, and students love getting those class announcements going forward, which is really, really important. So that's kind of how it looks from a student's perspective. If I look at my activities, just wanted to show you that last activity that we posted. That's the get to know you activity. If I add a response there, I can press on one of those and I can actually get my activities there. And if you notice that it didn't have a template, so the template didn't pop up at the start. That's where I was talking about. Sometimes creating response templates are fantastic ways of just scaffolding the skills, structuring the skills to say, oh, I'm on the right page here. This is where I put my work, and going on from there. And there's so many great things that you can do from a teacher's point of view, just going forward. A couple of things that I found really, really useful in regard to Seesaw, and that is providing support for my students through a range of different ways. And I just wanted to talk about one specifically that I thought was a really, really great idea. Lots of you are producing content. So I'll just go to my other class. When you're assigning student work, don't forget to think about what you normally give your students in regard to activities. And just because you're doing it remotely doesn't mean that you can't provide your students with some support with, might be, say, paper or pencil, taking photos of worksheets or Blackline masters or graphic organizers, or doing different things like that. So if you were doing, say, let's just say once again, you were doing a writing task and you had a checklist, and I'll just put, don't forget to check the elements, the key parts of a narrative. So if you're allowing your students to write a narrative piece, for example, and you do your instructions and you do your video and all that sort of stuff, that's great. But it doesn't mean that here you can't do up a little engaging kind of activity that shows different aspects of a narrative. So if I do a little checklist up here, top left-hand corner, don't forget this is the student response page. So the students will be typing or saying their story here. We could put a little checklist at the top here. Make that a little bit bigger so that you can see. And we might put a little, and by the way, you might think, oh, this is a little bit of work doing this, but once you've done one, you can reuse those. We might put that as being purple, pink. And we could create a little checklist here where once the students have actually done the different things, so first one could be orientation. And that was my first checklist. So when the students are actually typing their story on the side here, they can actually get their pen tool and say, yep, I actually have done that. Maybe a different color would be better. I actually have done that part. And so it gets them self-reflecting a little bit more instead of just doing the activity, handing it straight in and off I go. I've done that now. It's a great way of actually submitting those different things going forward. And so providing a Venn diagram or a graphic organizer or just, and it doesn't have to be created in here. You could actually have a picture that you're actually drawing in. So let's just say I had those Seesaw shortcuts here. I could drag that in there and say, oh, this is actually how, if we pretended that was a checklist of something, we could actually have that in our page just by dragging an image. If you've got a PDF, you could just take a quick screenshot of that PDF and have it sitting in the top right-hand corner. And what that does is just provide a little bit of structure or reference points for the activities that are actually going forward. Okay, so I'm just going to assign that activity to my students. I'll just save it. And you can see there that's sitting there ready to be assigned, and I will assign it to my students going forward. The last one I want to talk about is just really, really quickly is feedback, because I am conscious of time. So if we've got some students that have handed in some work, let's have a go. We've got a response here. Looks like Kate's responded, but nothing's there. So I'm going to click on Kate's and I'm just going to give her a comment. Kate, looks like you forgot your work. Please redo. And we can post that and actually have that going back. Now, one of the things that I allowed my kids to do was actually look at resubmitting their work. So if you look down here, we've got a range of different things. And here we've got this enable item editing, which allows our students, once they've submitted it, to actually go back and do reflect on the work. Because if you think about it, there might be just 2 or 3 elements missing. And if it's not a summative piece of assessment and it's just a bit of work in progress, going backwards and forwards and seeing that growth from first submission through is a great way to have some of these settings enabled. And that's why I did want to spend a little bit of time with that this morning at the start of the webinar of going through these, because these are critical in regard to getting kids to collaborate going forward and actually work on similar pieces. So one of the activities that you might ask your students to do is actually look at one of the other students' work and see if you can expand on their descriptive writing and go forward that way. Another great thing to do, especially with remote learning, a little exit tickets. Exit tickets are fantastic ways of getting kids to reflect on their learning for the day. You'll be aware of exit tickets. So if I go to the activity library and look at, I'm finishing each day with an exit ticket for grade 2. And you can see here that I've got some exit tickets, little emojis. How was today? It was up and down. I've got exit tickets where it's a little bit more, where we're after students to be a little bit more, to explain their thinking a little bit more. You can see here by just looking at all of these pictures, we've got a range of different ways and exit tickets for different subjects. Down the bottom here, we've got MAB blocks and maths and place value exit tickets. And don't forget, we can actually customize or personalize these community activities to make them a little bit more relevant for our students going forward. Obviously, we're not going to use these coins because they're American. We can start to use some of our materials that you've got saved on your computers. So when I'm finishing today, I really want you guys to think about what have you already got? What are your resources that you've already developed? How do we use those in Seesaw to access the children at home without necessarily going and doing some more work? And it could be that simple case of screenshots or photographs of a worksheet that you might have that you might be able to digitize, put in there, but also include some audio instructions, maybe use some of the multimedia aspects where you get students to reply through video or audio and actually come together a little bit more with what you already have. I think it's important in these challenging times not just to think of this is going to be an add-on, an extra. I think this is more just a way of not refining what we do, but just using some of the great resources that we've already got and actually going on from there and actually using them with Seesaw going forward. There was a couple of questions, I think, about integration with other things like Google Classroom or Teams. If you've got really young students, don't forget that Seesaw was made for younger students. So some of these icons like plus and how we reply and the symbols and visuals have been custom made for our little learners. And so we don't want to necessarily make tasks harder to accomplish than if it's as quickly as getting it done in Seesaw and submitting it that way instead of jumping through hoops to actually get the work out of them. We don't want to add increased stress. And certainly there'll be times to use Teams and Google Classrooms in other aspects of it, and you might be able to integrate it with some of the other students that are a little bit older. But I think one of the really great things about Seesaw is how it is custom made for little learners, and these big icons and the colors that they've used. There's a lot of work that's gone into that from a Seesaw point of view going forward. So just to answer some of those questions that we had before, yeah, we are limited with some of those things that we can add. We can't add multiple attachments and doing things like that. So we've got to think about how we're actually going to scaffold that and actually structure our lesson. We might have lesson 1 at the top where we're actually presenting a YouTube clip, and then lesson 2 could be a follow-on activity from that. So lesson 1 could be just watching without too many instructions going down the page. It's always good to think about what the students have at home. So if they're going to have lots of restrictions at home and they can't watch YouTube at home, then just be really careful in posting those things about accessibility that they can't actually access at home as well. And obviously things like really long videos and really detailed pictures that are going to take up a lot of bandwidth at home, try and reduce that as much as you can. I actually love the audio recording more than just making videos of myself, because I know it's not as demanding on our Wi-Fi setups at home. And I'm not sure about your family, but it's becoming an issue in families going forward, just how much data is being used up during the day in regard to parents working from home, but also older brothers and sisters and so forth as well. So just something to take into consideration going forward. So I might jump back into webinar and just turn off my sharing, turn my page back on, and just see if there's anything, Mike, that maybe I can support and help with.
Yeah, sure. There was some good questions coming in, but when you were talking, some other people were answering them and testing things out, which is great. Love seeing that sort of activity across a community of people. Can parents access activities and respond through the student accounts, especially for like the very young children?
I would certainly keep those separate. And if you're looking at the parent accounts and you're wanting to set those up, I think that would be worth doing than having messages come through a student's account there where the teacher's not necessarily sure of what's happening there. So I would imagine you've probably got some other communication aspects at home as well that might be worth exploring first before you sign up to all those parent accounts. But yes, it is beautifully made for parents. There are some really nice features in regard to communicating, and there is actually a parent app, a Seesaw parent app, that is separate from the way students log in. And I think that would be worth exploring, probably after you've explored your initial communication way that you're normally communicating with parents as well. With parents as well. Yep.
Yeah.
Naomi said about things that you're creating in things like Word. Yeah, really easy to export Word documents as PDFs or taking a screenshot, doing those different things. Super easy to do that. Talk to your colleagues, get online, because there's lots of things that we can help with that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, totally. Announcement order looks like it just comes in newest first. You can't actually reorganize which order your announcements go in?
No. You probably want to do your announcements, schedule your tasks, and then probably do your announcements as you want to make them instead of scheduling, because you might have work coming in later on that goes against the announcement, or kind of a bit of a conflict between the two. So I've always done announcements at the start of the day and at the end of the day, knowing that I don't want to do it late at night or early in the morning, because that's the first thing they see is those announcements in the inbox. So make them during school hours, but by all means assign tasks when you would like them going out during the day.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you covered this. Can you explain what the repost feature actually does compared to accept?
Repost.
The repost feature. I'm just trying to understand that question a bit better. Maybe, Jeff, if you can clarify that for us, that would be good.
Yeah, I think I know what he meant. I'm just jumping in quickly now.
Okay.
Was he thinking with announcements or with activities, I wonder, Mike?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I'm just waiting to see if he puts back in. I'll come back to you if that's the case.
Let me just check.
Well, here's one from Daniel while that's happening. Oh, Jeff, send back. Sorry, not repost. So I think Daniel had the same sort of question. He tried using the send back function for when a student's work was not up to scratch, but they didn't receive a notification that he had done this. Is there a way they can receive a notification? And then I guess if you layer that in with Jeff's question about sending things back rather.
Yeah. So if you find that those settings, there's nothing in the settings that says that should not work. I've always done little comments in the comment section, because I think then you can send kind of announcements throughout the day that says, hey, don't forget to check your feedback that the teacher's actually giving to you. I also understand that you might not want to be doing that for 26 kids as well. But I would definitely encourage you to write just really quick comments, even if you've got a comment bank on the side and you're cut and pasting a little bit, that actually those comments you can actually see those comments populating in my inbox as a student, if that makes sense. So I'd definitely be using the comment feature probably more than the send back personally.
Yeah, okay. Should specialist teachers set up their own accounts or be part of a class teacher account?
Say that again, Mike.
If you're a specialist teacher, so for you, for instance, when you were teaching in your school, did you set up your own account, or were you just part of the class, like the teacher's account for each class?
Really good question. I always encouraged my specialist teachers to have their own accounts. Now, that does mean that they have to log out and they have to have another QR code. But what it means is that that classroom teacher that's probably doing 80, 90% of the work and the communication with that student is probably going to have and build that relationship with the one teacher, which I think is a real benefit of Seesaw, not a whole pile of teachers that are inundating and not aware of what's happening with the other person. I always think it's good to say, okay, I might actually have a timetable at home where I'm actually logging into my art specialist and kind of log in and actually attend that work. But most of the time, I think the classroom teachers, because they're dealing with most of the subject areas, I think that classroom teacher works well when it's just a defined class for them and a separate one for the specialist teachers, Mike.
Yeah. Okay, great. And then Jeff saying he writes a comment and then press accept, but the student doesn't see it. Do you think that's like something set up in the notifications at the student end that's maybe got notifications turned off or something?
Yeah, the student should receive notifications for that. I'm just in Seesaw at the moment, and I've just got a little bit of time that it's taking to load up. So it's just taking a little while. The notification should sit in the inbox on the right-hand side there. But yes, you can, if you go up to the spanner in the class settings, you can turn, if you remember when I got set up at the start, I turned everything off because I just didn't want all of those pings to happen and the emails coming through. But you can turn on those notifications and the permissions a little bit more specifically than I've actually shown you. So I'd encourage you on the right-hand side of your class just to go up to your classroom settings and just have a look what you initially have actually got at the moment all set up.
Yeah, that's good. I think you've covered off all the questions that have come in during that last session, so that was really good.
I think one of the things, Mike, I always do is I learn a lot from the community section. There are so many very wise teachers that have scaffolded tasks so beautifully and simply using visuals. You know, don't reinvent the wheel, but at the same time, just spend that little bit of time. We don't want other teachers' voice if you can spend a bit of time adding your voice to that activity going forward.
Yeah, totally. That's good advice.
Mustafa just said, how do we see our folders? In the teacher, when you're in your teacher account, you'll see your folders on the side. You should be able to see your folders actually lined up. There's a little folder icon next to, underneath the inbox, underneath the class journal, underneath the inbox icon, there's a little folder, and you just press that and you can see the art, reading and writing folder that you've got there.
Right. I'm just going to put a link right up the top while you're just chatting, Paul, with just a link out to the Seesaw course that you just completed.
Yep.
So if anyone's interested in grabbing that course, it's going to be nice and cheap and cheerful. I think $49. It's going to dig deep into a lot of these things, plus extend you out. So I'll just drop that up the top and make it a sticky post, and you can keep going.
And down the bottom, guys, I've just posted a link to the Seesaw help page with all of those text shortcuts for those little icons that we did going forward. So I've just put that. Hopefully it's come through. It does take a minute or two to come through, but I've always found that those little text shortcuts where it puts a camera instead of writing the word camera is a great connection for the kids to make, to say that's the icon I'm looking for to create that piece of work. So I'd encourage you to have a look at those little text icons going forward.
That's a great tip. Excellent.
Just looking through.
Yeah.
Can students have access to more than one class? Absolutely. You will have noticed that little QR code for every class that you create. There'll be a little QR code. And so I would not rush these things out. I'd really think about, right, I'm going to have an art one. I might have a classroom one and one other one. Get it all on a sheet, email it to parents so they can put it on the fridge, and the kids will come up and actually scan it and they'll be off and running. The clearer you can get it from the start, the less of those little niggly problems you're going to have later on.
Yeah, good advice.
And that's why I said probably communication to your parents, where you currently talk to your parents, whether that's through an LMS system or email system or whatever, just explaining what's about to happen is probably the first step before you slam your kids with all these tasks and all these different things saying, what do I do? Take it slowly, step by step, and I think we're going to have better success for that. Can we print Seesaw? So you can print individual. If you go to the, let me just have a look here. When I've opened students' work, near the comment and the like and the folder, there are 3 dots. And when I click on the 3 dots, it allows me to edit, share that item, delete item, or print. So you can actually print individual items, especially if you think you need some kind of anecdotal evidence of things like that. But I'd encourage you to set up some folders as well, because often digitally is good to actually have and keep them all in the same spot as well. But definitely at the bottom of the student's work, when it starts to come in, 3 little dots, you'll see a print icon, and you can also save that as well. So if it's a certain file type, for example, a drawing, if I click on save, it goes to my downloads as a JPEG file. So I've got a little kind of digital snapshot or overview of the person's work itself. And Melissa's answered my question as I've gone through it as well. So thanks, Melissa. Appreciate it.
There's a question that just came in right up the top from Lisa, if you want to scroll up and have a look at that one.
Can students still add their voice recording? Yeah, so that's probably what I demonstrated really poorly at the start, Lisa. I would put all of my voice recordings in the instructional part at the top and not in the response templates at the bottom. It seems to really mess with that a little bit. And for me personally, you know, we don't want our kids getting frustrated with saying, how do I access the annotation tools and the things like that? So please put your audio recordings definitely there, more than actually in the activity itself. It seems to play a little bit with that response template, depending on the student's device that they access it with.
Yeah, good. Excellent.